Have you ever noticed that sometimes you can sleep for 8 hours, spend most of the weekend at home, avoid anything particularly stressful, and still wake up on Monday feeling completely depleted? Your body may have rested, but your brain feels heavy. Simple decisions feel harder than they should. Motivation is nowhere to be found. Even small tasks seem to require more effort than they ought to. Most people assume the solution is simple: get more rest, sleep longer, take a day off, slow down. But what if the real issue isn't rest at all? What if the missing piece is recovery? For many ADHD women, especially after 40, this distinction changes everything. Because rest and recovery are not the same thing. You can spend an entire day doing very little and still not recover. You can sleep well and still feel exhausted. You can take a vacation and come home more drained than when you left. The problem is that most advice focuses on reducing activity, while very little attention is given to reducing neurological load. Today, I want to explore why ADHD women often need far more recovery than they realize, why exhaustion isn't always a sign that you're doing too much, and why understanding the difference between rest and recovery may completely change how you think about energy, burnout, and daily life. The exhaustion that doesn't make sense. One of the most confusing experiences for many ADHD women is that their exhaustion often seems disproportionate to what they actually did. You look at your day and nothing appears extraordinary. Perhaps you answered some emails, attended a meeting, made a few phone calls, went grocery shopping, prepared dinner, and had a conversation with a friend. From the outside, it looks like a perfectly normal day. Yet by the evening, you feel completely drained. This often creates self-doubt. You look around at other people who appear to be managing far more than you are and wonder what is wrong with you. Why are you tired when everyone else seems fine? Why does life feel so effortful? Why do simple days sometimes leave you feeling as though you have run a marathon? The answer is that ADHD exhaustion is not only determined by what you do, it is determined by how much your brain has to process while you are doing it. Many women spend their entire day carrying an invisible workload that nobody else can see. Their minds are filtering sensory information, monitoring conversations, tracking unfinished tasks, suppressing distractions, regulating emotions, remembering obligations, managing transitions, and trying to stay focused in environments that constantly compete for their attention. The body may not be doing much. The brain, however, is working continuously. One way to think about ADHD is that it often increases the energy cost of everyday life. The challenge is not simply attention. The challenge is regulation. The brain is constantly deciding what deserves attention, what should be ignored, what needs to be remembered, and what should happen next. For many ADHD women, these processes require significantly more effort than people realize. This becomes even more pronounced in women who have spent years masking their difficulties. Many become highly capable adults. They create systems. They double-check everything. They arrive prepared. They compensate for weaknesses through intelligence, discipline, and effort. From the outside, they appear successful, organized, and reliable. What nobody sees is the energy required to maintain that appearance. Imagine two people driving the same distance. One car moves efficiently. The other drives with the handbrake partially engaged. Both reach the destination, but one uses far more fuel. Many ADHD women spend decades operating with the neurological equivalent of that handbrake. They get things done, but the energy cost is dramatically higher than most people realize. Eventually, that cost accumulates. Why sleep doesn't always fix it. This is where many women become frustrated. They recognize that they are tired, so they try to solve the problem with sleep. They go to bed earlier. They spend more time resting. They give themselves permission to slow down. Yet they still wake up exhausted. Sleep is essential, of course. Without it, nothing works well. But sleep and recovery are not identical. Sleep restores biological functions. Recovery restores capacity. Imagine spending an entire day inside a noisy airport. Bright lights, announcements, crowds, decisions, movement, conversations, delays, uncertainty. Your nervous system spends hours processing information without pause. Now imagine that you go home and sleep for 8 hours. Will you feel somewhat better? Probably. But will all that accumulated stimulation disappear overnight? Not necessarily. Many ADHD women live with a similar level of stimulation every day. Their nervous systems rarely receive enough time to fully process, integrate, and recover from what they are experiencing. Sleep helps, but it cannot always compensate for a chronic recovery deficit. One reason this issue becomes so important after 40 is that many women have spent decades ignoring their recovery needs. They learned to push through. They became the responsible one, the capable one, the reliable one. They managed careers, households, relationships, children, aging parents, and countless invisible responsibilities. For years, they simply kept going. The problem is that every demanding day withdraws energy from the nervous system. Recovery is what replenishes those resources. If the withdrawals consistently exceed the deposits, a recovery debt begins to accumulate. At first, you barely notice it. You feel a little more tired than usual, a little more irritable, a little less resilient. Over time, however, the effects become harder to ignore. Brain fog appears. Emotional overwhelm becomes more frequent. Motivation decreases. Recovery takes longer. Activities that once felt manageable suddenly feel exhausting. Many women interpret these changes as personal failure. In reality, they may simply be signs that the nervous system has been under-recovered for years. This distinction is perhaps the most important idea in today's video. Rest is often passive. Recovery is restorative. Scrolling social media may feel restful because you are not working, yet your brain is still processing information. Watching endless videos may look like relaxation, but attention systems remain activated. Spending hours on the couch while mentally replaying conversations from the past week may technically count as rest, but it does very little to restore the nervous system. Recovery is different because recovery reduces load. Recovery creates spaciousness. Recovery allows the brain to stop working so hard. For some people, recovery may come from a walk in nature. For others, it may come from gardening, reading, meditation, creative hobbies, quiet mornings, or simply sitting somewhere without constant stimulation. The activity itself matters less than the effect it has on the nervous system. True recovery leaves you feeling more resourced than before. Many forms of rest do not. One of the reasons many ADHD women become increasingly drawn to nature as they get older is because nature provides something modern life rarely offers: a reduction in cognitive demand. Modern environments constantly compete for attention. Notifications, advertisements, traffic, screens, conversations, deadlines, and decisions create a relentless stream of incoming information. The nervous system never fully gets a break. Nature operates differently. The brain does not need to make hundreds of micro-decisions every minute. There are fewer demands, fewer interruptions, fewer signals competing for attention. Researchers studying attention restoration have repeatedly found that natural environments can help reduce mental fatigue and restore attentional capacity. For many ADHD women, this effect feels almost immediate. They arrive feeling overstimulated and leave feeling calmer, clearer, and more grounded. It is not because nature magically cures ADHD. It is because the nervous system finally gets an opportunity to recover. When people think about recovery, they often think only about sleep or physical rest. In reality, recovery is much broader than that. Physical recovery involves sleep, movement, nutrition, hydration, and allowing the body to restore itself after exertion. Mental recovery involves reducing decision-making, reducing information intake, and creating periods where the brain does not have to constantly solve problems or manage competing priorities. Emotional recovery involves spending time with people who feel safe rather than draining, creating healthy boundaries, and allowing yourself to stop carrying everyone else's emotional needs for a while. Sensory recovery involves reducing noise, visual clutter, bright lights, notifications, crowds, and other forms of stimulation that require ongoing neurological processing. Many ADHD women discover that their exhaustion is not primarily physical, it is mental, emotional, and sensory. Sleep alone cannot fully address those forms of depletion. Many women notice that the strategies they relied upon in their 20s and 30s eventually stop working. The ability to simply push through begins to fade. Noise becomes more irritating, crowds become more exhausting, travel requires more recovery, busy environments become harder to tolerate. Part of this may relate to hormonal changes, part may reflect accumulated stress, but another important factor is awareness. The body becomes less willing to ignore its own needs. What once felt manageable now creates consequences. The nervous system starts demanding a level of care that it may have needed all along. Although this can feel frustrating at first, it can also become an invitation. Instead of constantly asking how to squeeze more productivity from an exhausted system, you begin asking a different question. What actually restores me? That question often leads to a much healthier relationship with energy. Perhaps the greatest obstacle to recovery is guilt. Many ADHD women feel guilty for needing quiet, guilty for needing time alone, guilty for saying no, guilty for leaving early, guilty for protecting their energy. Yet recovery is not laziness. Recovery is maintenance. Nobody feels guilty about charging their phone. Nobody feels guilty about putting fuel into their car. Nobody feels guilty about watering a plant. Yet somehow, many women feel guilty for replenishing the very system that supports every aspect of their lives. The truth is that recovery is not the opposite of productivity. Recovery is what makes sustainable productivity possible. Without recovery, every accomplishment is funded by future exhaustion. Eventually, the bill comes due. If there is one idea I hope stays with you after today's video, it is this. Your problem may not be that you need more rest. Your problem may be that you need more recovery, because rest and recovery are not the same thing. A complex ADHD brain processes more information, notices more details, absorbs more stimulation, and often carries more invisible effort than the world can see. That means it may also require more restoration than the world expects. The goal is not to become someone who needs less recovery. The goal is to understand your nervous system well enough to give it what it actually needs. Because recovery is not a luxury. It is not a reward. It is not something you earn after working hard enough. It is a biological requirement for a brain that is carrying more than most people realize. And when recovery becomes a priority rather than an afterthought, something remarkable happens. Energy returns, clarity returns, resilience returns. Life starts feeling less like survival and more like something you can genuinely enjoy. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to Complex Brain Living. Every Sunday, we explore ADHD, nervous system health, longevity, and slow living for women with complex minds. And until next time, remember, sometimes the most productive thing you can do is recover.